Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about something very interesting and has been the rage over Netflix for quite some time. And it is just this really crazy documentary that is a series. And when you start watching it, you're like, what? This is what everybody's watching these days? And then it kind of captures your attention because it's so crazy. But what I'm going to be talking about is the character, and this is a real life character, Joe Exotic. And what this is all about is the Netflix documentary about him, and it's called Tiger King: Murder, Mayhem, and Madness. And boy, is it crazy. Let me tell you a little bit about this guy. He used to be a zookeeper, and what he had was these places where he actually would breed tigers. And he found a way to get really rich on raising these tigers. He'd sell them. Once they got too big, guess what he did? He just murdered them. But he had employees that worked for him that took care of the animals. Some lost arms, and I think even someone died. Don't quote me on that, but I couldn't watch all of these videos to be honest with you. But I do want you to know that if you haven't heard of this, it's been all over the news. And so what finally happened is this wild and crazy guy that was making all this money over and killing tigers, beautiful tigers, raising them and just killing them. And what he would do is he would, get people to come look at the cubs. And once that was over with, they say that he got rid of them. But he was so outrageous at some point that he even ran for governor and president of the United States. But he had this long feud going on with the woman that was the big cat animal rescue. That's what it was, Big Cat Animal Rescue. And her name was Carol Baskin. And they had this big crazy feud going on. And something about, she had a very wealthy husband, but she was this really good person that had all these cats and had, did everything she could to rescue them and care for them. And she had a big problem with Joe Exotic about what he was doing. But at the same time, she was very hypocritical, and he was after her and even put out orders to have her murdered. And somehow her rich husband, they alluded to the fact that he disappeared. No one could find him, but there was this huge health insurance or some kind of life insurance or something. Anyway, she inherited all of his money and he just disappeared and nobody's found him. And nobody knows. But of course, Joe Exotic says she murdered him. And they have this feud going on and on and on. And the way that they're portrayed is that either of them are very nice people to get down to it. But this is just Netflix. You don't know how much is exaggerated. But one thing that isn't exaggerated is that Joe Exotic is in prison now, thank goodness. Because what he did to these animals was unbelievable. And it was totally wrong and illegal. So now, don't worry, because now he's in the federal prison and he's serving 22 years for what he did to these tigers. So it was animal cruelty and murder and everything. He was disgusting, but how on earth does he have the goal to run for governor and president? Of course he didn't make it. But at the same time, he was also married. And in the show, they show him getting married to 2 other guys. So at the same time, I think in Las Vegas. I mean, who does that? All right? it's okay to marry and to marry of the same sex, but two at the same time, that's where that's not going to work out too well. So anyway, that I gave you a little background. If you haven't seen the show, I don't know if you want to waste your time, but it is a waste of time, but it is very entertaining. I will give it that. But let's look at Joe Exotic's chart to see if we can see any of these crazy antics going on. It has to be in his astrology, right? So let's put his chart up. And looking at Joe Exotic's chart, he has Virgo as his ascendant, which makes Mercury the chart ruler because Mercury rules Virgo. It goes to the 6th house. The 6th house deals with pets, with animals. So he does make a career and his life out of animals. And we also have Jupiter and the Sun there in his 6th house dealing with animals. But I will say this, Jupiter is combusts the Sun, meaning it's weak when it's in the same sign of the Sun, and the closer it is, the more destroyed it is. So this is not a good combination. And I would think that at some point his health will suffer because of it, because look where Uranus and Pluto are. He was born in the 60s with that Jupiter, and it was what, 1963 when that Uranus and Pluto conjunction were very, very close, representing the rebellion of the 60s and those born in the 60s. But I want you to pay attention to Pluto, the way that it is opposing the Sun in the 6th house. And Pluto is deep, dark stuff. It can deal with scandals as well because it has every connotation that the 8th house has. So he was involved in all sorts of horrendous scandals. And, you know, even when I do look to where his moon is, oh my goodness, his moon is with Rahu. But not only is it with Rahu, it's with Mars and Rahu, the moon, they are all in Cancer. There's a problem there with moon, Rahu, Mars in Cancer. First of all, Mars is debilitated. It's very weak in the sign of Cancer. It's retrograde, so it is haywire. And Mars with Rahu can be very violent. And it is in the 11th house, which the 11th house deals with. Actually, believe it or not, the 5th and 11th deal with politics. But that was crazy that he ran politically. But I feel like the moon being in Cancer is the most powerful position. Why? I'll tell you why. Because the moon rules Cancer and it makes the emotions extraordinarily strong. And Mars and Rahu intensify it off the chart. And let me remind you, when we look at his chart, Mars rules the 8th house, which is the house of scandals and disruption, and it is with Rahu Mars. So there is the tight aspect that deals with the scandals and disgrace and humiliation. And when you look to where his Saturn, Venus, Ketu are, Venus Ketu can sometimes mean some very bizarre relationships, right? But Ketu is also losses. So Venus Ketu can, not always, but it can deal with some type of losses in relationships, especially since this Venus Ketu is aspected by opposition Mars and the moon. And Venus is in the same sign of Saturn. I find that people that have Venus with Saturn are very lonely in relationships many, many times. Not always, but I have seen that. But the most important thing, I think, is the extremes of the mind. The moon is the mind. When it's with Rahu, it's off the charts. You know, it makes somebody paranoid. And a lot of people, famous people, have moon Rahu, and they are so powerful and amazing. But there'll be times that they will drive themselves crazy with their thoughts and their worries. And with Mars there, it makes it even very, very hostile. So this is somebody that could have the courage to kill an innocent animal and mistreat them and destroy them and not care. And even his employees that were just marred and bitten and destroyed, he didn't seem to care. Although his employees, for the most part, from what I understood with the little bit of it that I watched, they cared about the animals. They did. So, but there's that Mars-Saturn opposition. Mars-Saturn, whenever they're opposed, gives somebody extreme persistence and diligence and does usually make one successful. And here is somebody that was not very successful in their life, found a way to make massive amounts of money and went crazy. And pretty much, I just want to say the mind, which is the moon, it sits with Mars, ruler of the 8th house, and Rahu, which definitely caused some major disruption in his mind, in his thoughts, the way he thinks. But one more thing I might add, the 11th house. It is the house that's the 8th from the 4th house. And the 4th house is the home, the family, the mother. And when there are disruptive planets like this in the 11th house, it means the mother's mind is definitely destroyed as well. So you gotta remember the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So there's got to be some disruption in his life, in his childhood experiences that would cause him to do the things he did. So I just wanted you to get a little feel because everyone's kind of wondering about this character. And yeah, I'm just basing this on what I heard on Netflix and this crazy, most insane, but sickeningly entertaining in a way. But hey, that's what movies do. So with that, I'd like to close. If you would like more information on me or a consultation, you can always go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org. Or if you would like to study with me, go to my university website, which is University of Vedic Astrology.com. But don't forget, sign up for my free newsletter and you'll get all of these predictions, my monthly predictions, delivered free to your email. Thank you.